It's the holiday season, and in today's video we'll celebrate. I was actually looking forward to some new Dawning lore this year, but it turns out there isn't any unless I missed something. But instead this year we'll do a mashup of lore, skits, and naughty and nice list content from years past. Stories dating back to some of Destiny 2's first dawnings, and some of the most heartfelt entries. Some of these may be a little bit outdated in terms of lore, but happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy Dawning. Enjoy some of these stories and lore. It's the holiday season, so I thought it'd be fun to see who's on the naughty and nice list in terms of Destiny's characters. These lists are based off of some lore and my own opinion, so leave your own list in the comments below. Let's start with the nice list, those guardians and characters receiving exotic weapons and armor for the Dawning. We're not going to mention every character because there's tons of them in the Destiny universe, but let's talk about the main ones that we've seen over the last couple of years and some from the tower. First up, Zavala. Zavala has a ton on his plate. He's the one who holds this city together along with characters like Ikora Rey. We've seen his struggles and triumphs over the last year, like in Season of the Haunted, but overall Zavala seems like a nice guy. He's on the nice list. Lord Shaxx. Well, he's Shaxx. He's on the nice list.
Delightful! I could feel that in my bones!
Eva Levante. Although many have a hunch that Space Grandma could be leading an army of darkness, she pops up in the tower for festive celebrations and brings cookies and gifts. This is why she's on the nice list. Kaido. Kaido has transformed a lot since we've met back in Season of the Chosen. From wanting to command our Vanguard leaders to a partnership like this. This bond is now stronger than ever. Kaido has proved she's worthy of our alliance and will have a big part to play in Destiny's Infinity War-like moment coming next year. Since Beyond Light, Banshee's story has really hit home in terms of his background, an Exo that was once Clovis Bray, who has been reset 44 times. He chose not to have those memories of Clovis anymore and begin a new life as an Exo. Banshee just seems so wholesome sometimes and gives us nice exotics and catalysts, so he's on the nice list. Mithrax. Season of Plunder brought a new side to the Elixni Kell of Light. Mithrax was seen in his early pirate days using relics of darkness to slay enemies and even destroy his own crew. Although terrible, we witnessed how he transformed though, from ruthless pirate lord to leader, father, and Kell for the House of Light. He was responsible for creating this camp for his people, now allied with the humans, and even stood by friends like Saint 14 when they had a tough time. Speaking of Saint 14, he's up next. Saint is sort of in the same boat as Mithrax. He once destroyed hundreds if not thousands of Elixni, but since House of Light arrived in the city, he has changed his ways. He now helps these creatures he once called Fallen. He has a true friendship and connection with them and even their leader in Mithrax.
Elixni, Mithrax, they stood with us, brothers and sisters in battle. This is a bond that cannot break. Their lost will be buried beside our own. The House of Light is part of the city now, under the protection of Saint 14.
Spider is a crime lord leader. Not too long ago, he sent a spy to the Batsa district to learn the inner workings of the city. Maybe he could cause some ruckus and take some things over. At least for now, at the end of Season of Plunder, he was one of the leaders who put that rebuild plan into action, helping the House of Light and these Elixni that live here, giving them better living environments. Some of you may be a little burnt out on Crow, but there's no doubt his transformation has been amazing. From Aldrin Darkness Prince to a bird hatched anew, Crow has learned a lot about who he is and who he wants to be.
Didn't know it would kill the Scion.
Kaido sends an emissary to the tower, and you kill him.
As for the Drifter, this one sort of depends on the day, but recently Drifter has been pretty helpful. Last season, this character showed more emotion, and he and Eris have been having more meetings. Some shady deals could be going on behind the scenes, but Drifter's overall intentions have been helpful to the city and our guardian. Despite all the Eris' evil theories, Eris Morn has also had one of the biggest influences in the way we battle the Hive. Just think about what we would do without Eris. She has so much knowledge that's assisted us over the years, like the Tree of Silver Wings incident, Savathun's rituals and song, and even the tunnels beneath the moon. Eris Morn is on the nice list this year. Maybe she'll get a box of raisins. The Bray sisters. Anna and Elsie have become big parts of the Destiny story since Beyond Light. Anna was poking around searching for secrets and clues on her past life and the Bray family, while Elsie knew about dark futures and was working with us to try and avert them. While they do have a crazy madman scientist grandfather, the sisters want the best for humanity and its technology, like the Warmind Rasputin.
I will honor you. You demand a life for a life. Take mine.
Now we come to the naughty list, the fun part. These characters won't be having any Vexnog or holiday cookies this year, only Cabal oil and coal. Let's kick this one off. Tess Everis. She's taken too much of our money, put her on the naughty list. Rahul. Need I say much more?
I'm very curious to see what you've got for me to crack open.
Mara Sov. Mara kinda could be either. She's manipulated her own brother for years, and some of her Awoken were killed, but she's also helped the city and our guardian, so this one's kinda tough, but let's just put her here for now. Here's a big one, Clovis Bray. I don't know how you can get much more worse than this. Clovis Bray used humans and experimented on them to achieve the Exo Project. When Vex began to invade Europa, he wanted to send them off-world to keep his work and legacy there safe. He didn't care if billions died on other planets, only about his success on that moon. He turned Elsie into an Exo, and even corrupted his own children's genetics and DNA to make them more like him. Clovis has been helping this season, but I wouldn't hold your breath for too long. Callus, grow fat from strength and darkness, he's turned evil. Callus has always seemed to play the Guardians in the city for his own amusement, but has become obsessed with the darkness and the truth he's found with the Witness. In dialogue, he's told us that I've seen the end, I've seen the darkness, and he wants to be one of the final gods who remain, and to do this he's joined the one who's commanded its army. Ralk destroyed his own planet and all of his people, most of them. He was also stationed in Savathun's throne world to keep a watch on her and try and convert her more into the darker side of things rather than the light. He stole a worm god mother and sucked up all its power and worms to use on Scorn. When you think about it, Ralk was kinda like the Clovis Bray of the aliens. And to wrap this up, the Witness. What do you get when you mess with darkness and command it? You get put on the naughty list. The Witness is the king of darkness, and from the damage they've caused so far, this is why they're put on this side of the list. Anyway, Guardians, this is all we got for today's video. Wanted to make a fun little Christmas or holiday themed video, throw in the skit like we normally do, and let me know who you think should be on what list in the comments down below. Now, the Dawning Delights book itself is like 15 entries, so it would be a super long video, but I thought it'd be fun to pick certain stories out, discuss them together, and then you can read up on the rest of the book if you are still interested. So this isn't anything crazy like the last couple of videos with Aldrin and all that stuff, but I thought it'd be a fun way to bring the holiday season to the channel and share this time together with you. So whether you've been around here for a while or this is your first video, I hope you have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I hope you enjoy today's video. So for the past year, Eva Levante has been running an underground operation keeping civilians safe from the threats of the Red Legion. So Eva would help funnel these civilians out of the city and eventually made her way to the farm where she lived there for some time. She never really wanted to come back to this city. She sort of just sat here at the farm. She didn't really think she had a purpose anymore because she's been out of the shader game for a very long time. But one day Tess called her up, they had a little FaceTime chat, and Tess warned Eva about Cade's death and that there would be a ceremony in the tower very soon. So with this, Eva did decide to come back, and she met some old friends along the way, which made her pretty happy. And with this arrival, she planned yet another dawning celebration once more, and that spawned this year's festivities. So this whole Dawning Delights book is basically her different encounters with the vendors of the tower when it came to the dawning, and also their friendship. So there is a lot of these, but I pulled some that I thought would be the most interesting, and also we have some Shax and Mara love in there as well, so we'll definitely get to that. Let's first begin with Amanda Holliday. Amanda once told me that her mother Nora came from desert people and a place far, far from here. Nora had been on the road since she was a girl, sometimes with nothing more than an old scribbled map and that shotgun of hers. She didn't need much, but she did need people. Nora met Amanda's father in some half-abandoned village, and when she told him about the last safe city, well, he followed her. They had no family but themselves. They picked up fellow refugees on the way and lost others. Then they had their precious little girl. It must have been a slow, slow road, first with a little baby, then with a young child. But they believed, they had hope. They pushed on. Amanda told me about one particular dawning they had shared out in the wilds. They had fallen in with another family that had a child, Lucia, a bit older than little Amanda. They were agreeable travel companions. They found themselves in the thick of the forest with the wind wailing, a storm coming down, branches flying, and realized they had to stay put. So they find the wreckage of a dropship, lean up the wing and crumpled siding, and squeeze all the grown-ups and two little ones into the dry space under the rusted hull. Then Amanda's mother says, "We'll be here for a while, might as well do something to keep our spirits up." She sends the adults out foraging for something to eat, something to drink, and something to keep dry. Amanda's father comes back with long-leaved plants to weave into mats. Their companions return with full water flasks, some prickly fruit, and a dozen or so of wild vegetables like cucumbers. With dried fish from their packs, it's quite the feast. As the adults are working, Lucia is curling the rinds from the fruit into little flowers, but little Amanda is kicking her legs restless. "Make yourself useful, make some decorations," Amanda's mother urges her. She hands Amanda wires and nuts and bolts and a circuit board full of lights. Lucia then comes jumping with an old battery in her hand. Together the girls make miniature garlands of tiny bulbs, and Lucia shows Amanda how to touch the wires to the battery to make them light up. Bright little lights in a vast, dark forest. Amanda told me about the fruit with the soft white flesh and a sour taste. She told me about how they sang made-up songs together with no words, just humming and tapping out a beat on the metal walls of their shelter. She doesn't know what the fruit was, maybe it doesn't exist anymore. The other family, they got separated from Amanda's people. Later on, Amanda's parents gone, like so many others on the road to the last safe city. But Amanda Holliday still makes the lights, you know, uses spare odds and ends to decorate her workshop. She does it every dawning. So that's definitely a pretty interesting story. We learned about Amanda's parents out there in the wild. You know, they were also journeying to the last safe city like so many others, and they decided to have a dawning out there in the wild, and this card is titled Dawning Before the Dawning, so I thought that was a pretty cool story. Some residents of the tower have been around for very long indeed. The Guardians, the Exos, the old Iron Lord, they have seen the dawning after the dawning. Even before the tower began observing the holiday as we know it, there were those who would always celebrate with similar ceremonies of light and hope. Sometimes these memories blend together, but the feeling remains. This dawning season, last week? The week before? I can't even remember, but one of my suppliers tells me they had 2 of my boxes delivered to the gunsmith by mistake. So I go to Banshee 44 to sort it all out. The Exo has no recollection of a delivery, but he recognizes me and I notice his eyes glow a teensy bit brighter. "Must be about the dawning," he mumbles, and he turns on his heels and heads straight to some shelves at the back of the room. He returns with 2 big boxes. "These them?" he asks. We open the first one up. Inside we find a very old box of chocolates. Many different portable kits for cleaning weapons, a copy of Hunter of the Heart. I know this novel, but it isn't for everyone. A necklace with a bullet pendant tucked with care into a little box, and stacks of dawning greeting cards. I shake my head gently. These are presents people have given you for the dawning Banshee. The gunsmith blinks a couple of times, then he closes the carton. I worry he should have thrown away the chocolates, but maybe next year, and then he turns to the one on the counter. He lifts the cover. It is full of dawning gifts, wrapped in brightly colored paper and tied with glittery ribbon. Some are in tiny boxes, but others are guns, of course. They are all meticulously labeled. I think these are the presents you are giving out to friends this year. No? I ask with a wink. Banshee gives a brisk nod as he turns over the labels, reading them. I observe that some have detailed instructions, but the Exo shrugs. Got in the habit of writing everything down. Sometimes I don't always remember. He waves the thought away. Right. I still need my supplies, the boxes I came to get. I nudge him. He tilts his head a moment and finally raises a finger. Oh, I know where they are. But before he takes his boxes away, I tap the covers. You should label them old dawning gifts, new dawning gifts to be delivered. He nods at me and scribbles on the lids. I never forget my friends for the dawning, he makes sure to tell me as he hands me my packages. I'm very glad. Happy dawning, Banshee, I reply, squeezing his arm. I do hope he remembers to get rid of those chocolates. So that card is both pretty innocent and also very sad. We know Banshee's had 44 resets, so his memory is going a little bit bonkers, and we even seen that at the end of Forsaken when Cade died. Banshee said something like, "How's Cade doing? Tell him I said hello," and yeah, Banshee, I don't think we can do that anymore, but I'll take your word for it.
Memory ain't so good these days. But Cade. Never forget Cade. Hunter through and through. Left all his worldly possessions to whoever finally took him down. Don't know about you, but I'd rather lose every last memory in my head than know that little prince holds Cade's prized cannon. The Ace of Spades. Ace of Spades, as good as new now. Take it when you wield it. Remember. Remember. Now wait a minute. Hey, have you seen Cade around lately?
Sometimes when I face something frightening, I think of the strongest people I know and draw strength from them. Soraya Hawthorne is one of those people. I know her brusque attitude can be off-putting, and that's intentional on her part, but once you get past that, there is so much to learn. She was orphaned as a young girl, and Devram and Mark took her in. Honestly, I think having the two as role models is part of why she's as strong as she is. They raised her to be sure of herself and to always do what she thought was right, even though that ultimately led to her having to leave the city. As Soraya tells it, she came home one day to find Mark and Devram sitting at a kitchen table as though expecting her. They had her sit down, then they asked her if there's anything she wanted to tell them. She shook her head, nope. Mark asked her to try again, but she was silent, so he told her that Executor Hideo had stopped by their home. She asked how he was. You know how he is, Devram said. Tell us what happened. His face got in the way, Soraya said. Mark took a deep breath in and said Hideo claimed to have caught her stealing supplies that morning and that she didn't have anything to say about that. He reminded her that stealing supplies and breaking a faction leader's nose were both good ways to get kicked out of the city, and Soraya could keep quiet no longer. She almost shouted her explanation. The faction leaders didn't care about the people who needed food and supplies, the people who could not pledge to a faction because they were too busy struggling to survive. She wanted to help them, so she would sometimes steal supplies from New Monarchy. Devram asked, what about Hideo? Soraya rolled her eyes and groaned, explained that when Hideo had found her, he'd said all manner of nasty, evil things to her. She was worthless, she was nothing, things like that. Devram agreed. Hideo was, well, I won't repeat it, but suffice to say, it means an unpleasant person. He held a lot of influence though, and he was insisting Soraya would be punished, harshly. For Soraya's part, this seemed to crystallize something. She tells me that's the first time that she knew she wanted to leave the city, that perhaps this had been part of why she punched Hideo. She told her guardians and they couldn't believe it. They were quiet for a bit, then Devram broke the silence. Well, let's get packed. No, she said, absolutely not. She was not about to let her decisions hurt these men who had taken in and cared for her. They'd done nothing wrong. Oh, they fought her. As she tells it, they argued a long time until finally she shrugged and said, "If you try to come with me, I'll run away." She suspected they knew there was no bluff to call as they spoke now in tired, worried voices, making their case one last time. Soraya was adamant, "I won't let you suffer for my choices." What could they do? She asked when she had to leave. Mark said he can hold off Hideo for a day or two so she can make a plan. His voice became stern again and he said, "You're going somewhere close enough that we can come and check on you as often as we'd like, at least for a while. That is non-negotiable." He had no negotiating power, of course, but Soraya had agreed. She stayed very near to the city for over a year before saying proper goodbyes and heading out further into the world. Soraya Hawthorne is, in my mind, the definition of doing what you think is right regardless of the consequences. She knew it was right to help struggling families, she knew it was right to not put Devram and Mark in harm's way, and she knew it was right to give them some peace of mind by staying close. That is the kind of true courage I've always admired. So that story I think is very interesting because one, it gives us more backstory on Soraya Hawthorne and what she went through to get to the city, and also we get further explanations of Devram's partner Mark, who had a big part to play in Soraya's childhood. These two men raised her, they helped mold her into the woman she is now, and personally I think that's a pretty cool touch. Instead of all these stories of families struggling out there in the wild, her parents were completely gone from the start and Devram and Mark took her in. Now Devram does mention Mark in some of his dialogue lines and even when he says he's putting tea on, but definitely a nice touch from Bungie further explaining this lore and backstory, and I hope you enjoyed that one.
My dear Mark, I am toasty warm, I assure you. Though, you might send me more tea.
Let's lastly round this up with some more dawning information regarding Lord Shaxx and his booty call with Mara Sov. Now this isn't blatantly explained that it's Shaxx because Eva says she's not going to tell us, but we can totally tell from this description, so let's give it a read. "It's not only my customers who keep me running about, people are always coming to me for advice. Sometimes it's this shader or that, and does this mark look okay on me? Sometimes it's should I hold a dawning party or why should I go to their dawning party? But sometimes the questions are even more complicated. I was stealing a moment of quiet one afternoon to organize all the jumbled rolls of wrapping paper when I heard a resonant voice calling to me. How I jumped. It was a certain well-known titan, not Zavala, but I won't tell you who. Eva does not tattle about sensitive matters. He was carrying a formidable piece of weaponry, a complicated curved bow of many metal parts with a thick string connected to the ends. It's a compound bow, he explained, following my stare. For shooting arrows, I raised my eyebrows in puzzlement. On that weapon, he had placed a large poof of red velvet ribbon, a bow on a bow. I could tell from the tilt of his helmet and the taut grip on the weapon that something was amiss. I sighed. I saw this a few times every dawning. I suspected he was smitten and this would become some sort of short conversation. Warmest dawning greetings to you, Torito. This is not his actual name. Naturally, it's a made-up name. Eva Levante, they say you should give a dawning gift when you have a special friend, he boomed, trying to whisper. Who is they? I laughed. He ignored me. I bought my friend this bow. Is it a good gift? It all depends on your friend. What do they like? What are they like? Can you describe them? She likes to fight. She is regal. She is very... The Titan paused. Is a recurve bow more romantic than a compound bow? He managed to whisper this time. Ah, I nodded knowingly. I wouldn't know the difference between those weapons, but I understood his problem. But maybe a book would be better, he asked. Again, it depends on which book you choose. I have read Ikora's On Circle's revised edition, and it was pretty good. That is a terrible dawning gift. Might I suggest literature? Torito tapped the horn on his helmet to reflect. I did destroy a book of hers once. Should I replace it? Maybe you should not remind her of a bad thing happening. He didn't reply to this, so I went on. Perhaps this bow is already the right dawning gift for your friend. Do you think she would use it? Definitely, he said. Well then, I smiled. You have your answer. Happy dawning to you and your friend both. And to you, Eva, I hope your dawning is one to remember. Then the Titan thanked me, hefted the bow, and strode off. those that don't know, the Dawning is Destiny's version of Christmas, or a winter holiday. Story-wise, it was implemented when the first people began venturing to the last safe city. They of course still celebrated holidays, so they sort of merged all of these traditions together, and there came the Dawning. For the game's purpose though, it first debuted back in 2016 after the release of Rise of Iron, which was 2 years after the game came out in 2014. And since then, every year we've had a Dawning and more stories are added to the lore for us to dive into. The first Dawning brought a winter theme to the tower, some new weapons, quests, rewards, and even Sparrow Racing League. Since then though, whether at the old or the new tower, we've been celebrating year after year. The Dawning is not just a celebration for the Guardians, but also for the people of the city. Everyone who's had the opportunity to survive under the protection of the Traveler.
The city's holidays are like the city itself. People from 1,000 nations coming together to create something new. These days remind humanity that even when all seems lost, there is always a chance for joy. Now, as the year turns, the city celebrates with gifts and games. And Guardians unite in the spirit of competition, pushing one another to become legends. Just for a moment, there's peace, harmony, hope. This is the Dawning. It is a time to honor all that humanity has built and all that it will create. And rejoice in the light.
If you've been around Destiny for a bit, you may recognize Eva Levante, who was not just introduced for the Dawning, but also other festive events like the Revelry, the Festival of the Lost, and also Crimson Days. There may be a couple of more I'm missing. Her previous days in Destiny 1 of being a shader vendor are over, and now she focuses on uniting Guardians and humans together in the last safe city to celebrate our past, our triumphs, and our victories together. Much like current holidays, citizens are brought closer to their families. They exchange gifts, stories, and tons more. Here's one of those traditions described from a Destiny 1 item. Fortune telling at the start of a new year is one of the many traditions refugees brought to the last city. Each Dawning, Guardians open mysterious boxes containing paper fortunes, hoping for luck and good news. So this story here is one of my favorites. It's, I think, from a couple of years ago, and it has to do with Lord Shaxx trying to give a gift of a bow to someone special, and he's getting some advice from Eva. I was stealing a moment of quiet one afternoon to organize all the jumbled rolls of wrapping paper when I heard a resonant voice calling to me. How I jumped. It was a certain well-known titan. Not Zavala, but I will not tell you who. Eva Levante does not tattle about sensitive matters. He was carrying a formidable piece of weaponry, a complicated curve of many metal parts with a thick string connected to the ends. It's a compound bow, he explained, following my stare, for shooting arrows. I raised my eyebrows in puzzlement. On that weapon, he had placed a large poof of red velvet ribbon, a bow on a bow. I can tell from the tilt of his helmet and his taut grip on the weapon that something was amiss. I sighed. I saw this a few times every Dawning. I suspected he was smitten and this would not be a short conversation. Warmest Dawning greetings to you, Torito. This is not his actual name, naturally it's a made-up name. Eva Levante, they say you should give a Dawning gift when you have a special friend, he boomed, trying to whisper. Who is they? I laughed. He ignored me. I bought my friend this bow. Is it a good gift? It depends on your friend. What are they like? What are they like? Can you describe them? She likes to fight. She is regal. She is very... The Titan paused. Is a recurve bow more romantic than a compound bow? He managed to whisper this time. Ah, I nodded knowingly. I wouldn't know the difference between those weapons, but I understood his problem. But maybe a book would be better, he asked. Again, it depends which book you choose. I have read Ikora's On Circles Revised Edition, and it was very good. That is a terrible Dawning gift. Might I suggest literature? Torito tapped the horn on his helmet to reflect. I did destroy a book of hers once. Should I replace it? Maybe you shouldn't remind her of a bad thing happening. He didn't reply to this, so I went on. Perhaps this bow is already the right Dawning gift for your friend. Do you think she'll use it? Definitely. Well then, I smiled, you have your answer. Happy Dawning to you and your friend both. And to you, Eva, I hope your dawning is one to remember." Then the Titan thanked me, hefted the bow, and strode off. So some of you might have heard that one before. That is Lord Shaxx trying to gift this bow to Mara Saw, if we believe, and he's asking Eva for his advice. It's pretty funny. We know the helmet stayed on, and we've seen other lore entries between these two in the past, so it was pretty funny to see that. In another story, it explains Amanda Holliday's traditions. This specific story explains how she was once stuck out in the woods when she was a young child with another family, and they took shelter in the wreckage of this old dropship. Then Amanda's mother says, "We'll be here for a while. Might as well do something to keep our spirits up." Lucia comes jumping, an old battery in her hand. Together, the girls make miniature garlands of tiny bulbs, and Lucia shows Amanda how to touch the wires to the battery to make them light up. Bright little lights in the vast dark forest. They then experience this dawning time together in this worn-out ship crash-landed in the middle of the woods. The other family, they eventually got separated from Amanda's people. Later on, Amanda's parents gone, like so many others in the road to the last safe city. But Amanda Holliday still makes the lights, uses spare odds and ends to decorate her workshop. She does it every dawning. So those are some pretty cool stories, and there are tons more out there. If you just want to search up in the lore, you can just type in dawning and it'll all come up. And speaking of that, here's a good piece to sort of summarize this and wrap it all up with the winter lotus shell. Some give gifts and light candles. Some write fortunes and release paper lanterns etched with snowflakes and stars. Some sing songs and say prayers and tell stories passed down from the refugee roads. Tables bend under the weight of every kind of food and drink imaginable. The rich tapestry of dawning festival traditions found in the last city has only one common thread, but it is the brightest thread of all. We are humankind. Of those born in the cradle called Earth, we are the last. The nights are long, but we will survive them together. We must not let our light go out.
I am at your service. Are you ready?
So the Dawning had two quests this year, the Rite of Dawning and the Pigeon Provides. The first one involves Keitel and the Cabal traditions for their time near the holidays, and the other involves Saint 14 and his relationship with the Elixni, baking cookies for them. Let's first start with Rite of Dawning. The story begins when you first visit Eva and pick up your holiday oven for this year of 2021. With this oven, we can bake tasty treats and cookies for those around the system, and they'll give us some gifts in return. Commander Zavala raises an eyebrow as you explain Eva's plan. Frankly, Eva may have a point, he says. We could welcome Keitel to the tower and celebrate the Dawning here, with all of us. He stops briefly to watch two guardians near the postmaster. They pelt one another with snowballs before launching themselves over the railing and falling to their deaths. Their ghosts patiently resurrect them where they stood. The guardians laugh and break briefly into a dance before charging off toward the crucible. On the other hand, our Dawning traditions may be strange to an outsider, Zavala muses. He claps his hands. Very well, let's do something for the Empress. The Cabal homeworld was ravaged by the Hive, but perhaps we can bring some of its magic back to them this year. Head down to the EDZ and see if you can find some intel on Cabal celebrations. I'd ask Keitel personally, but he smiles. Wouldn't it be better if it was a surprise? With this info, we would head to the European Dead Zone and find a Cabal datapad near Firebase Hades. With the secret Cabal intel, we venture even further to find a ceremonial cup in a nearby lost sector. With the Tor Battle ceremonial cup, we speak to Drifter for some assistance. The Drifter squints at you suspiciously. Ceremonial wine? He asks through a mouthful of chocolate. The only thing I got like that around here is this old bottle of engine cleaner. He rummages on a nearby shelf for a cloudy bottle of thick liquid. He examines it more closely, rubbing dust off the side with his thumb, revealing Cabal language hidden under the grime. Well, I'll be damned. He holds the bottle up to the light. Is it supposed to be all chunky like this? Drifter shrugs and hands you the bottle. All yours, kid, Drifter grins. Just make sure to mention to Zavala how gracious I was. He winks and then laughs to himself. You know, I was just telling Tess and Eva at Mahjong last week, this Dawning I want Zavala to owe me a favor, and wouldn't you look at this? He breaks into a wide reptilian smile. It's a Dawning miracle. You've amassed quite a collection of Cabal artifacts, Zavala says as he admires the vestments, cup, and wine. These will surely remind Keitel of the traditions she left behind when she came here. But there is one final step I'd like to ask you. In Cabal culture, gifts are most meaningful if the giver has overcome great hardship to deliver them. I'd like Keitel to know how much we value her as an ally. Zavala levels a look at you. He almost sounds guilty when he speaks. I must ask you to enter Keitel's land tank and defeat her champion Ignovin in the Rite of Proving. Leave the ceremonial objects behind when you leave. Keitel will understand their significance. Zavala places a hand on your shoulder. Thank you for this, Guardian. I know it is not easy, but you'll be showing someone how important she is by respecting her traditions this Dawning, and that's a great kindness. Now get out there and go kill Ignovin. So after we go into the proving grounds, take out the strike boss, and then return to Zavala, here's what he has to say. The commander greets you with an uncharacteristic smile. I just received a message from Keitel, he says. She received the gifts you brought her. She said that, in the old times, the vestments were worn over battle-scarred armor. The wine was justly taken from those defending it, and the humble cup reminded those gathered that opulence was no better than moderation. It was a tradition her father did not practice, but one carried out by the elders she respected. Zavala's eyes soften. Thanks to you, she was able to perform that ritual with those close to her. You honored her, and our alliance is stronger for it. You did a wonderful thing this Dawning, Guardian, he says. You should have the pleasure of telling Eva that her plan was a success. Eva listens to your story of bringing Dawning cheer to Keitel's Cabal. Though she doesn't quite agree with the rampant bloodshed, she understands the importance of respecting tradition, and she admits that she has gone to similar lengths to bring cookies to those who truly deserve them. She looks over towards Zavala, sees his smile, and thanks you dearly. Then she sits back down and returns to what she'd been busy doing, knitting an absolutely massive pair of dawning booties. So a pretty nice story there about Keitel and the Cabal traditions in their dawning here at the tower. We now move on to Saint 14 and his cookie baking for the Elixni. Eva Levante turns to greet you when you arrive, but her eyes do not have their usual twinkle. "Hello, Guardian," she says. "If you've come here looking for someone to fill you with dawning cheer," she sighs, "you've come to the wrong place. Because, my dear, old Eva is no longer the kindest person in the tower. I believe that title now belongs to Saint 14. Listen," she insists. "He told me what he plans to do this dawning, and when he did, my heart melted. Please go to him, have him tell you what he intends to do, and then, I beg you, help him achieve it." She pulls at the edge of her scarf. "This last year was difficult for all of us, but especially Saint, with Osiris being... with what happened with Osiris and all. This is the kind of thing that can break a man, you know," she says softly. "But Saint, that man's heart is so big." Eva covers her eyes with her hand. You give her a reassuring touch on the arm and leave her to herself. "Guardian, just who I wanted to see." Saint 14's voice is bright and he spreads his arms wide when he sees you. "I have had a wondrous idea for the dawning," he says proudly. "The Elixni of the House of Light, they live alongside us now, yes? But still, in many ways, they are outsiders." He leans close to you. "This dawning, we change that. I remember how I felt welcome when I first came to the tower and Guardians brought me lavender cookies. So I think, let us help the Elixni to feel the same way. There is one problem," he says, scratching at the dent in his helmet. "What is lovely cookie to us may be terrible gift for them. They have been polite enough. I want to give them true Elixni delights for dawning. But worry not," he says with a smile, "for I have heard of a database they left when they fled Europa. And in that data," he nudges you. "Recipe," he shouts before you can answer. "Now go," he says, pushing you back with such enthusiasm you nearly stumble. "Find this recipe and let us spread dawning cheers all over our Elixni friends." So much like the first quest, instead of going to the EDZ, we go to Europa and find some ingredients and a recipe for these new Elixni treats. After that, we return to Saint. "Wonderful," cries Saint as you place the ingredients before him and set down Eva's holiday oven. "Now we become bakers." The process is unexpectedly dangerous. While he measures ingredients carefully, Saint has little regard for cooking time, believing that hotter flames will simply bake more quickly. The hangar fills with so much smoke that Amanda Holiday rushes over with a fire extinguisher. At one point, Saint is forced to use Ward of Dawn to protect you both from the rapidly rising Kelsdo. His desperate cries of "more sugar" will echo in your mind for weeks to come. Finally, it is done, and the delicately spiced, carefully molded nuggets of frosted ether have been gently wrapped in spirals of flaky dough and baked to golden perfection. A quick dip in an ether glaze and the swaddled ether dips are ready for delivery. "We are champions of the dawning this day, my friend," Saint says with deep satisfaction. "Now quickly, go hand them out while they're still warm." It is then here in the quest where we travel to the Elixni quarters and hand out all of these ether dips to our friendly alien allies. Saint listens eagerly to your story of delivering the ether dips. He is especially pleased to hear that the young Elixni enjoyed the treats most of all. "This is good news," he says with a contented sigh. "I know these Elixni have seen me as a monster in the past. I hope this will show them I have moved away from that. It is not too late to show them who we are. Mithrax taught me that, and it was not too late for me to learn. The big titan is quiet for a moment as he listens to the pigeons gently cooing at his feet. This dawning has helped my heart, Guardian. There is not peace within me, but there is a small warmth, something I feared I might not feel again. For this, I thank you. And wrapping up the quest, we then go back to Eva. You tell Eva about Saint and the Elixni. I told you he was kind, didn't I? She asks. Though I'm sure you weren't surprised, anyone who knows him can see it. She pauses to watch an Elixni hatchling run past on its way to the hangar. A caregiver follows behind, a cloth belt of infants bound tightly across their chest. The caregiver notices Eva and raises a tentative claw in greeting. Eva waves back warmly, then breaks into a grin as a half-dozen tiny hands reach from the swaddling to return the wave. The Elixni chirps with laughter and runs off after the hatchling. You know, Guardian, Eva says happily, I think this may be the best dawning yet. So anyway, Guardians, there you have it, some heartwarming tales from this year's dawning. Now me personally, I just took screenshots of this quest as I just grinded through it and didn't really read the story, but once I did, I'm like, yeah, that'd be a cool video to make, and I hope you enjoyed this if you skipped over it as well. I also hope you have a happy holidays and Merry Christmas, and I thank you very much for watching. Anyway, my name's Eve, and I'll catch you Guardians in the next one.